And this one is ready. We got more bread ready to go. The problem starts with wheat as a crop and looking at how it's grown, looking at how it's being processed all the way to the final loaf. And see all the shine. Even buying the whole wheat bread at the grocery store, you're not really getting the same product that we're making here. It is totally okay to pop the big bubbles if that gives you a little bit of joy in your day. You don't really want high fructose corn syrup in bread ever. You see that on a label, run away. We're just learning and also learning to respect the earth around us. Sourdough bread is sort of endless with what you can do with it. We're just trying to make it the way we like it, really. The Artisan rustic bread is just flour, water, and salt, 3 ingredients. People are buying sourdough at the grocery store, and what they're buying is something that's called sourdough, but is a completely different product in its entire makeup. It's just regular bread where they then pour lactic acid into the bread to flavor it sour. And so people who are buying sourdough bread from the grocery store, the not real sourdough, are getting misguided. They don't really know whether they like sourdough or not because they're eating something that is called sourdough that is not historically sourdough at all. Sourdough is not a flavor, but rather it's a methodology in making bread. My name's John, I'm the owner of Proof Bread. We're an artisan bakery that happens right here in my home garage. We first brought power in for the original ovens, and we didn't own the house at the time. We're taking this crazy gamble of modifying somebody else's house by adding a bunch of power into the garage, hoping that that would be okay. And it turned out that we were able to negotiate to buy the house a few months later. So it's just things you don't think about when you try to start a garage business. I bought the bakery. I wasn't thinking about when I bought the bakery that I was going to have to be putting in drain lines and stuff a year later into my property. Baking 1 or 2 loaves of bread at home is as simple as just combining 3 ingredients plus a leavening agent. If you compare that to the bread that most people are used to nowadays coming from the store, you can't find a loaf of bread without 15 ingredients. You should look at a bread label. It should be really short, really simple, and everything should be stuff that you've dealt with before yourself. First thing that we do when we make bread is just combine flour and water. This process has already been optimized over time, trying to figure out the perfect one. This is our custom blend of flour. And the thing is, we're mixing about 180 pounds of dough right now. The dough is transforming kind of in front of our eyes every couple seconds. So now it really is starting to come together, and you can start to see the beginnings of gluten forming as the dough hook grabs the dough and starts to pull on it and stretch it more and more. I'm not really trying to go much past this stage. So this is about the time where I'm going to cut it, and the AUTOLYSE now happens passively. The AUTOLYSE helps relax the dough, but also strengthen it before you add a leaven to it. So you'll notice that this dough strengthens substantially over 20 minutes. Right now, if I grab it, it breaks apart really easy. When we come back in just 20 minutes, you'll be able to stretch it further. By the time it comes out of the bowl, once the leaven and the salt have been added, the dough will already have significant strength, and the AUTOLYSE really helps kickstart all of this. If you go down the bread aisle, you see all these brands and all these choices. Sara Lee, Wonder Bread, Dave's Killer Bread, all just one company. The bread aisle is more of an illusion of choice. You're really buying from one big corporation. If I grab it now, look at all of that. It's still breaking here, but the strength can't really be taken away now unless I overmix, which is hard to do. A lot of people are constantly worried about overmixing, and all of those people need to calm down because it's really hard to overmix. Bread gets a bad reputation because we have changed it over time into something that is different from what it was historically. We also make whole grain sourdough croissants. The flour blend that we're using in these is a blend of Arizona heritage grains, including white Sonora, which has been grown here since the Spanish introduced it to the natives hundreds of years ago in this region. By using heritage grains, we're part of a solution where we're not robbing the earth of nutrients in the wheat that we're putting in our bread. Wheat itself has all of these sort of anti-nutrients in it. Phytates, lectins, gluten itself is tough and hard for our bodies to digest. When it comes to bread production at an industrial level, there just simply isn't the time in order for the wheat to ferment out and neutralize all of those sort of anti-nutrients. And that's the reality of industrial bread, is you can go start to finish in rapid speed. When we change the fermentation to sourdough, we change from a 2-hour process to something that actually takes more than a day. Sourdough bread that's been long fermented is lower on the glycemic index. It's just generally easier for our bodies to take in. So a lot of people that have trouble with bread, where when they eat bread they feel bloated, they don't feel all that well, those same people can eat sourdough bread often with no consequence. And so we get this as just a regular thing amongst our customers. They discover our bread at a farmer's market and just experience so much joy that they can eat bread again. The mixture of flour and water over time creates that fermentation effect. So if you put flour and water in the right temperature, and you will eventually get a sourdough starter. If you keep feeding it and making it more robust over time, you're going to end up getting this colony of microorganisms that have the ability to leaven dough on the fly for you every single day. Our sourdough starter's name is Harriet, and she's based here in Mesa, Arizona. She's in the refrigerator cooling down so as to preserve this sort of peak level of fermentation. When she was fed, the level that she was at was where this tape line is, and so this is growth that happened overnight. Meanwhile, what's really happening, it's not about the volumetric rise so much as it's about the cell populations of the lactobacillus and the wild yeast multiplying. As the sourdough starter rises and becomes more bubbly, as the smell is right, and you can just, working with it daily, know that it's the right time for it to go in the bowl, we try to trap it at that level by cooling it down as it's hitting that level. This is sort of an investment in a pet. That's why Harriet has a name. There is a fair amount to know about managing a sourdough starter. You have to know when to feed it. You have to know when to mix with it when it's peak maturity. And you have to have the discipline to continually care for it, even when you don't feel like it on a particular day. So that makes it challenging to keep a sourdough starter just purely from that standpoint. We're dealing with a living product in our loaves of bread, and it is completely alive, chock full of microorganisms all the way until it hits a terminal temperature in the oven, which is 135 degrees for yeast. So the bread really is alive that entire 30-hour process. Those edges that lift up into the ear singe a little on the sides, create a little char, and we find that to be a really excellent flavor. In bread, anything that isn't quite this dark loses its crust, loses the caramelization, loses a lot of flavor. I understand not everybody is for crusts, and there is bread for that. There's croissants for that. There's anything soft for that. You'll eat some of these things and you won't even realize that you're eating sourdough products. We don't label everything sourdough, but we're not shying away from the fact that everything actually is sourdough. This is a sourdough croissant, so it doesn't have any yeast. I'm gonna cut through it really gently so you can see the structure of the pastry. You can see the chocolate. You can see the honeycomb separation of all the layers. So all that this pastry has is flour, water, sourdough starter, butter, some sugar, and salt. Let's go for a bite. Turned out really nice. I do think that there are people, though, that would trade local whole grain flour for white flour in their bread just so that they can have an open crumb structure. And I think that's the point at which you have made a decision more for your own pleasure as a baker than for the resulting bread that we have to remember is a form of nutrition. Water does play a really significant role in dough. The more water we create in dough, the more dough mass, actually the more ionic activity in that dough. And so that sort of helps along fermentation in its own way. It has a scientific process. There's a reason that dough production has taken on more water as a whole over time. But I'd like to caution the home baker from getting too obsessed over the size of the holes in the artisan loaves that they're creating and refocus to the quality of the flour that's being used. That should be a much bigger discussion that doesn't happen. Are you buying flour from your local mill? Do you have a local mill where you are? Can you figure out if there's a stone mill nearby? It can get a little precarious because these flour bags will break. You wouldn't think there'd be so much involved with just bringing flour in, but when you're working at these levels, it becomes a challenge. When it comes to the business side of things, frequency in ordering can mean whether you have money to pay the bill. These are not cheap orders. You know, we're talking about highly premium flour that comes at a premium price point. We have to buy a lot of it to be able to negotiate a decent price point and have margin. But if we buy too much of it, we lose cash flow too quickly. That has to go to some other investment or just to our operations. So managing ordering, I guess, is one of those things that you should have been paying attention to in business school, but it's so boring and irrelevant in school that it's better just to sometimes learn as you go. We work with our mill, who then in turn works with the growers that are growing from them around the state to better the crop year over year, but we do so while also factoring other considerations other than what the baker wants. So we also have to be influencing the soil positively and doing all these things. By working in smaller supply chains, there's just better overall control from seed all the way to plate. And over time, we can improve the quality of our agriculture, improve the quality of our soil. You know, when we first started a few years ago, my role was just purely in the bakery all the time and just learning how to bake. I'm almost embarrassed to walk in through here. This is still our construction yard. So 2 months ago, what was back here was just a pile of construction waste. We've worked a lot inside the confines of the building. We've learned a lot there, but I think the next phase for us is to grow food that then ends up in the bakery. So we don't have the space on this property to produce wheat. We don't have the space to produce all these like major staple crops, you know, sugarcane, whatnot. We do have plenty of space for tomatoes, produce, and all of that. We could easily feed our family. We can feed our bakery, which means we can feed all of our customers with all the specials that we produce through just the 1/3 of an acre that we have here. It's plenty of space. If you go into any of our local grocery stores right now, I would think you should find mulberries. Will you find any mulberries in the local grocery stores right now? No. Part of the problem is they age pretty quickly and mold really quick. So they're really meant to be eaten right away or preserved. Well, our grocery stores aren't in the business of preserving food. Instead, they're more in the business of throwing it away often. So there's just no way that a mulberry can make it from the tree to the grocery store to the person in time before it spoils or becomes jam. Yet this tree, this one tree, will give hundreds of pounds of fruit every year. They're abundant, they grow super fast. One thing that I've been learning about plants lately is really they are just like pets. They don't just take water, they have to be fed. We have the start of a worm bin going right now, and those red wiggler worms that I put in there are creating vermicompost, which will fertilize, hopefully, trees all around the property. There it goes. I swear that plants seem to understand when their environment's not well suited for them, and then they don't do well. You have to be able to read what the plant needs next. Really, everything about this tree in its initial time here is building strength through its roots. My goal is for this thing to produce a lot of fruit reliably in future years. So right now, the most important thing is to just get it established in the soil. I think that when people bake bread at home, they get a sense of fulfillment that comes from understanding this process that's difficult, that's likely resulting in their immediate failure at what they're trying to do. But something about the food aspect, something about the tactile aspect of doing something in your hands brings people back to try again. And then through that process of discovering this journey of bread making, you rediscover that this is a process of human life that has been around, that we have chosen to trade out for the convenience of going to the grocery store. Whenever something is too easy, something else is traded off in that process. This loaf has now been sitting for a couple of hours, so it's had a chance to cool, and you can hear that flakiness to the crust. I'm gonna cut it, and you're going to get a crumb shot. We can sort of analyze the crumb together and get all baker nerdy. So here's the crumb of my loaf. What I'm looking at is the fermentation itself. So now I can actually visually see all the fermentation sites. And what I'm noticing is a little bit of irregularity, which is what I want. And that happens through the stretching and folding. But I'm noticing a fairly consistent fermentation that's happening throughout the loaf. A lot of crumbs, as people are learning to bake bread, will burst at the top. So you're gonna get a huge open set of cavities towards the top, and you're gonna get density up at the bottom. That's what is known as a fool's crumb. If I cut this way, perpendicular to the ear, I'm going to get a pretty nice uniform slice of bread that's still suitable for a sandwich if that's how I want to use it. Keep in mind that this bread is not by design sandwich bread. So it's not going to be the exact same shape as the square bread that you find at the store, but still a really nice slice. This would make a mean sandwich. The first takeaway is you're going to be trying over and over again, and there's going to be this trial and error process. The thing that's encouraging is, though, that your worst result is probably way better than the bread that you're buying at the store. A lot of people think that bakers are worried about sharing their formulas and think that by sharing their formulas, bakers are giving all their secrets away. The secret is in the willingness to wake up every single morning at 4:30 and get this thing rolling. The secret is in the willingness every single night at 10 p.m. to feed Harriet, whether I like it or not, whether I'm tired or not. The secret is in every single day working on getting better. My equipment was not always the way it is today, and my process was not exactly what it is today when I had different tools. So there's the laminated croissants. You can just see how nice all those layers are in there. 81 layers of dough, butter, dough, butter. I really hope that more people venture out of their homes and deciding to look at the farmer's market from a different lens. Take off the grocery store lens, the perception of price that you have. You're buying to gain a relationship with the producer of that food. You might end up paying $1 or $2, whatever more per pound for that produce or for that bread, but that person who's selling you that food is going to start to recognize you. You're going to start to build this interesting relationship where you're heard, your wants and desires are appreciated by the person who's producing the food behind the scenes. In fact, we're going to probably obsess over the feedback you give us. And the thing is that industrial food producer does not care about you. They don't care about me. They just care about the bread or whatever it is they're producing moving off the shelves fast enough at the grocery store. You can sort of make a huge impact in your local food economy when you choose to enable people to grow and produce food locally.